everybody. Welcome to Thursday and welcome to the new and improved Flipside Streamcast Live, formerly Lions Guy Leadership Live, here with the Jedi Master himself, Dale Walls, and it's me, Flip. And we're excited to have you here. We rebranded on Thursdays to kind of get this going, and Dale ultimately trusted.
Had to put you in your own box, man.
Ultimately, that's right. I needed don't put baby in its box, right? Something like that. No, but we're excited to be here. We're excited to talk. And today's book review day. We're excited about book review day. This has been a book we've been looking forward to discussing. It is, I'm pretty sure for Dale, and I know it is for me, it's one on the top shelf when you take on teams. This is definitely one that you want to make sure that you have. And that's the Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. And great book, great author. Some great advice, and really, I think, and I think Dale, I'm gonna let you dive into it first. Love how he presents his books. I think that's probably the first thing we probably need to discuss a little bit about it is that kind of thing. So I'll let you take that away.
Yeah, man. Well, hey, I guess congrats, brother, for the new
for letting me do this
for evolving the series. No, I love it. Flip side, this flip side of leadership. It's good stuff. And look how fast we evolved this thing. We were just chopping it up. We were doing it on Zoom, and now we're streaming. So for all the world to see.
That's
and
right.
I love it. And I think it fits, the flip side, flip side of leadership is, it's that, like, we're trying to keep it real. Like, we got to break down some of these, like, smoke and mirror, makeup, cover up of, like, how raw and intense and demanding leadership really is, man. And that's what I love. That's what I love about our conversations. We're keeping it real. We're having the conversations that some folks, hey, good morning, Jay Tiggs, having some, we're having conversations that need to be had. And, maybe some people are having them, maybe they're not, but we want to have these leadership conversations because it's important, man. Like we said, I'll throw my Jedi wisdom out there, man. The force, or the leadership, is like the force, man. It's everywhere and it matters. And we need to be talking real about it. So let's jump into this. Yeah. Five Dysfunctions of a Team. We talked about doing this because I think, this got, hats off to Matt Bagley, who came into Corsica as COO to lead integrations, and I promoted him to president to help me with integrations with the company and our rapid growth. And he kind of tipped me to Patrick Lencioni. I actually hadn't heard of him before or seen any of his books. And this was Five Dysfunctions of a Team was one of the first ones that I read and ended up reading them all. He's got a number of books, but man, they are a breath of fresh air in kind of the things that we deal with leading people, especially in this book, talking about like these dynamics that are big hurdles and challenges. But and certainly there's a ton of leadership management books out there. But what I love about Patrick Lencioni's books is, like, he writes business fables, right? The book is a story. It's like a story about business. And, in this case, it's a story, I think, that we talk about, it's a CEO, retired CEO, comes into like a dysfunctional Silicon Valley group or something like that. I think you had the synopsis somewhere near you, but it tells a story, and, living a life of leadership and, leading people and so on. It's fun to read. I don't know. I could say, like, I kind of geek out, like, reading Lencioni's stuff because it's fun. Like, it's relatable. I guess there's the word I'm looking for. It's relatable.
I was gonna say. Yeah.
And but he still rounds it out. So after you read through the story and you see, the problems that he's solving for kind of play out in a drama, and these all too real situations that we all, embark on in a life of leadership or management. And then he brings it home and tells a fun story. And then, the back of the book kind of dives into the model. Like, hey, here's the framework. Here's what we're talking about. Here's where it's applicable. What I really loved and highlighted most about, even in this book, is, even in the model part where he talks about the five dysfunctions that we'll get into, he explicitly writes a section called the role of the leader, in this regard, which I love it, because right there is a role of the leader to be played in these different scenarios, right?
Yeah.
So so I love it. I love his books. There's another one I'll put out there I recommend it all the time, and then we'll do it another day. But my favorite Patrick Lencioni book is The Truth About Employee Engagement. And I think for anyone out there that's leading people, needs to read that book. This Five Dysfunctions of the Team. Yeah, it's awesome book too. If you're leading people, you need to read The Truth About Employee Engagement. It'll change the culture of your organization, I would say, in a big way if or if you're impressed by it and start implementing that philosophy. So that's my soapbox on my love for Patrick Lencioni's books. So
Yeah,
what you got?
I feel the same way. I think there's when I was doing a little bit of back research on it, and I, like you, hadn't read it probably for a little while, probably about 7 or 8 months. It was my last year's reading. It was in my last year's reading pile. But what I found when I started to do more is I love who has accepted this, right? Because it's applicable. You talked about relatability, right? It's relatable. I found in a little bit of research, a lot of sports teams actually are using it or have used it to try to get that cohesiveness down and going through the dysfunctions and really checking them off as a checklist of saying, okay, how do we attack this one? How do we attack this dysfunction? And I thought that was pretty interesting, just from a perspective and a sports fan anyway, of trying to see how things, because I think what I've seen anyways, we've talked about culture of teams, and you talk about and how those, and we talk about cultures of companies, and what I also like about the book too is it does break it down into whether it's a large organization, a small department, right, a sport, it's applicable on all levels in some form or fashion. So I think that's important as well too, because you can take someone who is running a team, right, and at a small level versus being the chief of staff at a company where you're running the C-suite, right? And either way, it's applicable. Not every single piece, but a little bits are. So, but yeah, I liked it too as an overview. And yeah, I think diving right into these dysfunctions is probably the thing to do. So I'll read them and then we'll go through them one by one. But dysfunction 1, he talks about absence of trust. And like you said, I love that he does the role of the leader for each one of them in the back of each chapter. And so what he says too is that absence of trust, and what the role of the leader is to encourage the building of trust on a team and demonstrating vulnerability first. So I think that's important. I'll knock this one. Trust is earned, right? It's not something. Now I think it's
Well, do you start with an absence of trust with that said?
well,
Because it's my chicken and the egg theory on trust. Like, well, where does it come from?
so what do here's what I do. I trust you until you prove otherwise, right?
Okay.
So I'm that way, that I'm a perpetual optimist. I believe that good in people is always there. And I believe if you're signing up to do a job, or you've gone through training to do a job, whatever that is, or you've put yourself through, if it's college, to get a certain degree for a certain job, I think that's part of you wants to do that. So I think inherently there's that in every person. I've seen that play out in numerous different scenarios where it ends up being like that. So when I look at trust, I look at, okay, I have someone on the team who wants to be there, but how do I engage that on some level, right? And I think the leadership portion of it is to be vulnerable first, right? You've got to be vulnerable first. And I think that comes to me, and I wrote this down, it comes in a number of things. I don't care where you've come from. I don't care how many times you've done it. I don't care any of it. You haven't been in the shoe. Let's just say you're coming in as a new leader, right? You haven't been in those shoes ever before, those ones there. And even if you were and you're back into an old role, it doesn't matter. The role is different than what it was before. The people are different. They all have their own unique things. Being vulnerable to me in that way is to identify the fact that, look, I don't know everything. I'm going to need everybody's help with stuff. I'm going to ask you questions, because I think what gets lost, and I see this with, you see the parables with young children who don't want to ask for help on stuff because they think it's weak, right? I think we're past, I mean, if you're a leader, you should be asking for help. You should be asking for people's advice, and treating your people on your team as the experts straight from the beginning and learning from them, I think shows you're vulnerable. And I think it shows that you want to learn and engage with them. So I think that starts your foundation of being trustworthy to them, and them being back to you, right? Of doing it. Say, I don't know, say, teach me, and go, what we would used to call go on the deck plates. And I got a great example of it, but go onto the deck plates and learn what you need, what you don't know. I think that's the way to be vulnerable, as well as engaging on multiple levels.
Yeah, I was taking a couple notes on that. I love what you said with regard to. I wrote it as a demonstration of commitment, right?
Yeah.
So you were talking about the degree, and I was like, that's really, if you're looking for something like a degree in a field for someone that's coming in and you're trying to baseline, your perception of them, your trust level, whatever, I like that, right? Because it was a demonstration of commitment, right? To the field, the trade, the whatever. So I wanted to acknowledge that. And I think, a couple things, with regard to trust, and some points that you made, and kind of like hit the beach ball from another side is, trust, we hear the term safe space a lot, but I've been on this matter, I've been talking about like what makes people feel like they're in a safe space, right? And so talking about trust, like people need to feel like they're in a safe space so that they can be vulnerable or whatever. And a part of that safe space needs to be, people need to feel acknowledged, feel like they're acknowledged, and they need to feel like they're heard. And that's, I think, a big part of trust, right?
Yeah,
That
absolutely.
if you demonstrate that you're hearing what the people are telling you, the team's telling you, you're acknowledging them, not just what they're saying, but them, as a part of the team, and as their contribution to the mission, whatever. I think that's really important in this area to build trust. And then finally, ego, like ego erodes trust.
Yeah.
I and I've been talking about this in a few other formats this week, on the podcast recordings and other things. Just ego, to me, that it's that guy on the team that's real. He wears it on his sleeve no matter what he says, that his primary mission objective is for him to win. Not the team's mission objective,
Right.
but for him or her to win, right?
Right.
That's ego, man. That screams louder than any one of those people ever think or know. And that's it makes you suspect. It's really damaging to trust to have someone on a team that's like, me first, and I encourage people to get out there and read more around and learn more about just the concept of win-win. Like, we can win together, right? We've all got our personal objectives and goals and the things that we're trying to do. But if it's real clear to me that when push comes to shove, you're going to put your mission ahead of everyone and everything else's, mission, you're not willing to find the compromise, right? Like, that's a big problem in today's, like, let's say, political leadership, lack of compromise, but I just think ego is something to be cautious of, that causes an absence of trust.
Well, it's a cycle, right? Like, if you think about the cycle of trust, like, people start off, whether you give it implicitly or not, right? You still have to build something, right? I always say that's not, you can't, if you're a leader, you don't just get trust. You have to be trusted in what you do, right? And so I always, and my saying of honesty, consistency, and transparency and it builds it. One of the three things it builds is it builds trust, right? So it's something that's gained over time. I love vulnerability to it. I think that's part of it, right? You can be vulnerable while you're being transparent with it all. But here's the thing, right? And it's going to lead into the second dysfunction. But trustworthiness is also saying, I hear you, right? Which is what you were talking about. You have a voice, no matter what you are on my team, whether you're an equal, whether you have a title, it doesn't matter. You have a voice because it's important. And you know, I've always seen when you talk about ego, if you have different levels of people on a team, I love putting that back on that person that has the ego and saying, hey, look, empower them. I'm telling you to go empower those people because they're going to make you successful, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you could get that into someone's head that they're not successful on their own, whether they have a great idea and they need a team to help them back it up, right? They have a great idea and they need an administrative assistant to put it into, a beautiful box for them.
Yeah.
Great. You didn't do it yourself then. Right. So that instantly to me takes the chip away. And with ego, it's all, I always go back to Powell, like your rank and your ego, when one falls, the other one falls with it. You cannot link them together. It's just, it makes more sense to me as a human, right? Because as humans, we're gatherers, we're congregators. We want that. Even if you're an introvert, there's still human contact that comes in it. And business and teams, obviously those are the most intimate settings that you can get business wise, is to be on a team and leading and doing a project together or something like that. So when it comes to trust, I think, again, my view has always been give it in the beginning, right? Trust, assume, and then go from there and see what happens when you do that. Like, and I'm not, look, this isn't a rope and go hang give somebody enough rope to go hang themselves type of a thing. I'm not, look, people are going to make mistakes. That's going to happen. That's fine. You can still trust them even if those things happen, right? If they're learning from it, like there's ways still to get around when negatives come. It's not that you don't trust because of the negative. You got to look at it from a lens and say, okay, why, what is it? Did it really erode trust, or is it just a mistake? Because I think that's important too. We fall into those things, a little too fast sometimes and go, oh, well, there was a big, now, obviously if it's a big something that you lost someone's trust, that's a different story that you have to gain back. But so that kind of leads us on to 2, right? Dysfunction 2.
Before we run to 2, can I chime in on something here?
Please.
I had wrote that down too, which was mistakes, right? And how do mistakes contribute to an erosion of trust? And something I've learned and believe in is, the acknowledgement of the person making the mistake, that it was a mistake, right? So how do we maintain trust when mistakes are made? How do we overcome these mistakes? And it's really important to be vulnerable and go, wow, I'm, because I give this to my kids, right? Leadership always comes back to, we got to lead our kids too. And, but because my kids will sometimes give me, like, they'll screw up and they'll be, or they didn't do something. They'll give, oh, well, I'm sorry. And we're like, well, hey, time out. You're sorry for what? Because like I'm sorry is not a Band-Aid for everything, right? It doesn't.
I'm sorry I got in trouble. I'm sorry you caught me.
It's the white flag to get the pressure off, right?
The funny thing, so you say that. The funny thing is I have 3 kids. 2 of them, instant I'm sorry's. 1, you gotta, and like my wife, you gotta, they gotta think on it for a really long time before they give you I'm sorry. And it kind of is annoying because there's a little bit of like, so what I think is, I screwed up, I'm sorry, I didn't know that offended you. That's the instant I didn't realize it was going to happen like that, right? But then I think you want what you're talking about, which is, okay, now tell me the reason why. You know that it was an instant. It's the difference between trauma that is chronic, chronic pain versus instant pain that, like, okay, you know what I mean? Like, okay,
well, I think that's a good point, right? Like if you screw up, right? Like if you screw up, there is 2 flavors of I'm sorry.
Correct.
I'm sorry you feel that way, or I'm sorry I screwed up, right? I'm
Right.
sorry you're upset that I screwed up.
And it may take
Is
time.
right.
Yeah.
And I think like mistakes to kind of like overcoming them in the interest of the future, right? Like is the acknowledgement that I made a mistake and this is what I learned, so I'll never make that mistake again. If you can
Right.
check those boxes with me, you'll retain or regain my trust. But sorry for the sake of sorry doesn't work for me, right? I want the apology that's an acknowledgement of, hey, an error was made and I learned from it. That's the most important thing to keep, to keep the trust, so to speak.
Yeah. Because it falls right into two, which is fear of conflict, right?
Yeah.
And he says demonstrate restraint when there are people engaged in conflict and allow resolution to occur naturally. I think if you understand and you can talk about it, you could, and maybe as an advisor too, or as a mentor or mentee, you may not. I mean, you talk about it like this, right? Unless you do something gravely to really slight someone. I mean, that's just, you talk about the deplorable things like sexual harassment, like those kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, intentionality, right? Like
Right. Take it off. Take those ones out of the picture and just say, okay, that one offended somebody. Because there's a lot of things now. Let's be honest. Like we have generations, and we're gonna get into generations, later date. But we don't always know what offends somebody and what doesn't, right? And there's the argument, I make fun of everybody. Okay, cool. Well, that doesn't make it right thing. So if it offends you, I think there's a sincerity to it where that conflict has to be, well, all right, how do people then go at that to say I'm sorry or to say that one didn't make me feel good, right? Everybody has to be open to, okay, I can make mistakes. I can, and I have to, you have to on the team have the environment that garners and is there to cultivate safe. You talked about safe situations to say, okay, listen, you may get an immediate sorry, like, hey man, I didn't know that. If I'm really sorry, I didn't know that. You're offended by it. I'm sorry. I apologize for that. No big deal, right? Or whatever at the moment. But to me, then come back and say, okay, let me direct that, because we used to say this all the time, and I'm sure you heard it. You handle things at the lowest level, right? Like, so you try to handle things at the lowest level. Something of a conflict doesn't need to go directly to the CEO every single time, right? It can be handled at a low level where people can, resolve the conflict at the lowest level. Because I think what I used to think was, well, it just doesn't need to be handled by someone that high up. And what I'm realizing now when I look back at it is it wasn't about just not getting to the CEO because it wasn't worth his time to deal with something that small. What I realize now, what it more was it's team building when you can have a conflict, you can work it out at its lowest level, and you can understand that, well, wow, we can make mistakes and we can not have the same opinion about something and still work together and get a mission done and complete something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it is way much more of a small team tactics and small team dynamics than it was about, we didn't want to tell the boss that we were having problems, right? Because I think back then I used to think that more, and now I look back at it and go, what they're really talking about more is still that guy doesn't, then that girl, whatever, that person in that position didn't need to handle something so small. It's also, though, fix it yourselves. Like, you're going to build from that. And as long as you have, again, the space to be able to do that, right? And I think correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like when people start communicating, because communication is huge to all of this, when you start communicating and you start giving the why, hey man, I felt like this because, or I did this because, you find that, when you think of it like that, or if you saw it like that, it makes sense the reason why you did your action, right? And I see that a lot, and I'll let you go, but I have a great example of that where, I recently had it with my boss, and finally I basically was blunt and said, this is how I saw that. And he went, oh, I did not, oh, okay. That's why you did this. And it was being that open. So is a conflict. Did either of us want to hear it? No. But we were trustworthy enough to be able to say, okay, hear me out, and I don't want to be offensive, but boom. And then you just say it versus beating around the bush, and then people are still assuming things, and it ends up not you end up with hangers, right? You end up with
Yeah.
like things left over,
Well, it becomes hard to, because and these things I think have been a bit cyclical, the absence of trust, because it's really hard to necessitate these difficult conversations with an absence of trust, right? I think it's the trust is foundational to be able, because look, you have to have these difficult conversations, like, to move forward. You've got to have them.
Yeah.
You got to have the same page meetings, or if you're not having them. And one of my highlights from the book that I just highlighted in this area where Lencioni said that those that avoid conflict actually doom themselves to revisiting issues again and again without resolution, right? Because if you're not having the difficult conversation, you're really just walking away from the fire until you don't see the smoke, until the smoke reaches you in the other room. Like, it's still coming around. You're not putting out the fire, it's still coming. So I think it's important, in something I wrote in the area of trust, but you mentioned it here in the necessity of having these difficult conversations is like that to gain perspective, right? To seek to understand and then to be understood, right? Start with trying to understand where the other person's coming from. What do they see? I think I feel really grateful, I guess, in my own growth to value perspective, right? To seek perspective. I don't need to be sloth of mind, like everyone else's perspective I need to adopt. And, but I want to learn from other people's perspectives to grow my own ability to, look at things better.
Right.
It's that analogy of, like, a beach ball has different color panels. And if you're sitting on that side and I'm sitting on this side, I see blue and you see orange. And you're
Still a
over there
beach ball.
you're going, hey, this is an orange ball. I'm like, no, man, it's blue.
Right.
And
Someone else
we're
is
going to
saying it's
duke it
red.
out. But the truth
Yeah.
of the matter is, you're just seeing it from a different angle. And that's the case with all things, and just seeking to understand, like, how you see it. But again, I guess we've got to get out of the ego has to be gone, right? Because, like, here's the thing. When I've dealt with people that are driven by ego in the past, that made the ability to have these difficult conversations a problem. And you made me think of this when you mentioned, like, the fear of saying that there's a problem, right? And right, people with ego walk around with this gotcha mindset, right? Like, oh, I got you. Oh, there's a problem, I got you, right? And you understand what I'm saying? Like, the ego folks, to they feed on vulnerability and negative in the
Yeah.
wrong way. Be on, like, and
Because they're trying to get above, right? They're
correct.
trying to
They're
move
trying to
up. They're
win.
trying to get above. Right.
They're trying to win. It's
Yep.
win-lose, not win-win, right? And
Correct.
so, I again, back to why trust, I think, is even foundational to fear of conflict, right? Like, this other problem, is I know, admit, it's hard for me to have difficult conversations with people driven by ego, because I know they're going to not aim to resolve the issue, but take advantage of the issue to elevate themselves, right? Like you said, they want to
Yep.
take that to win, take that to push you down. So anyways,
So here's the hard part about that, right? The hard part about it is when you have when people have been in organizations that the leadership doesn't work like that, right? When leadership doesn't work like that, and they allow ego-driven people to succeed,
yeah,
and when they believe that that's the way to success because how that organization worked was based on that, right? Like you could look at organizations and say, okay, I have to work my way up to the top, right? So from a perspective of someone new, yes, everybody needs to work their way up to the top. Everybody's a hand washer before they're a a food prepper, before they're a line cook, before they're the head chef, right? Like that's a normal way that you hear about chefs moving through the ranks.
Yeah.
And that's great. But what if the head chef says, we're all in this together, I need the line cook to be able to give me the food at the same time. I need the preparers to prepare it in the correct way. I need the dishwashers to wash the plates that we use for all that thing. If that comes out as how the entire team works, it fosters then it doesn't foster ego. It fosters teamwork. It fosters
culture of teamwork. Yeah.
Right, culture, yeah. Right? And so conflicts can still happen.
Yep.
But that person is just as important. And we've look, in America in general, and you know this, and Mike Rowe is one of, I think, the biggest proponents of it, is that like technical job, and we saw it when COVID happened, dude. We primary and we looked at nurses, nurses were doing, not to say doctors didn't, I'm not taking that away, but nurses were the ones there on deathbeds with people at the very end, right? And nurses got a very much different thing. Teachers were having to do, go from in school to online and figure out a way to still reach kids in some way, shape, or form.
Without the tools.
We looked at these jobs that were these primary care workers, and we looked at our emergency workers, I think, in a very different light than we ever have in a long time. We've always said, yes, support the Blues, support blah, blah, blah. But I think when
we're taking for granted.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at a team and say that person is as much as important as we are, then as the leader, then you're just that, right? One thing the Coast Guard, I really like, something that the Coast Guard does, and we try to do it too, I think, in services, but when you put different people in positions and Coast Guard does it really well, from my understanding anyway. In the Navy, when you get to a certain place, you work up even in a department to be the leading petty officer, is what they call it, right? So what we called it. So you would work up to there. So if you just got to a command, you would work your way up, and then by the time you left, you would be in these kind of top level positions. But what I really like, what the Coast Guard did, was they said it doesn't matter. Like, you're being tested yourself, and you're part of a group that is just as important. So whether you're in charge or not, we'll switch you out after a year and put someone else in so they can do it. And your job then is to support that person. And so you don't feel that way. And I again, it's hard to be applied across the board in business, but I really like that theory that says, look, I don't care what you do. You're just as important as my job is as a leader. I'm a leader, but it's just a job. It's not, you're right. Does that make sense? You need that position filled as much as you need the lowest position filled to do it. And they're all equal in some way, shape, or form. Do they get paid the same? No. But if you keep them in equal stature, then the conflict, which is what they're talking about, fear of conflict, then you don't have it. Because then you're like, wait a minute. I'm peeling potatoes, dude. You can't, right? You can't go make that beautiful souffle, that potato souffle, without me doing the potatoes. And you're not going to do it because you don't have the time. So you need me. I'm just as important in the process. And I think that's important when you talk about conflict. If you put everybody on a level,
important for both people, or both sides of the potatoes, to be acknowledging that the leader upstream and that person understanding where they fit in the system and feeling valued for their piece in the system. And that's one of the reasons one of Patrick's other books, one of my favorite, it talks a lot about that, the truth about employee engagement. And so it's important, just as important for the leader to know the value and demonstrate that they know the value of the members of the team, their contributions, as well as the members of the team to understand where they fit in the big picture and how they're contributing to the big picture. And we've talked about that in a few other ways too. Yeah. I wanted to give maybe a tool, around, maybe two tools, because you remind me of a second one with regard to these types of conflicts that we've been talking about. But, when it comes to these conflicts, these difficult conversations, right, it's human nature to try to avoid them, we'll say, right? Like we don't like conflict, but it's important. And I think this is where courage comes into leadership, right? What's the right thing to do? right? Courage is a virtue. Courage is overcoming the fears that you have to do the right thing. So the right thing to do, the courageous leader has these difficult conversations. Number one, and it's key, right? And that's hashtag Lions Guide courage and leadership. But but how do we do that? So I think it's important to go in there with a game plan, like truly, what is the issue that needs to be solved, right? What is the conflict? Bring some clarity to it. What is it? And then set an objective, right? So here's the issue, but what's the objective or the desired business outcome, right? Like how do we want to see it, right? So identify the problem and then set your North Star, right? What do you want to work towards? And now get in a room and figure it out, right? Sit down and get on the same page start with that. So get on the same page of what is the issue? What's going on?
Yep.
And where do we want to see it go? You can solve for those things together and bring clarity to it. And probably you should. Now you should have your own ideas and with all these things, you should sit down and have your own game plan with the intention of contributing well with the other party to, solve it, and be courageous and again, well-intended to solve it. Like, hey, we all have to win here. You have to win. I need to win. Team needs to win. We've got to get beyond this. And I think another one that you had mentioned was it is important to go walk in other people's shoes sometimes, right? It is, I think, important to go see what the potato guy's going through, and see, what his job looks like, so you can have some compassion, empathy, or just general understanding of just what they're up against. Because, right, there's a lot of that, right? There's a lot of, we put the blinders on and we're only focused on our team and our objectives, to hell with everyone else. But it's not, right? We're not that compartmentalized. There is a net effect of the success of those teams around us or the contributing teams. So I think it is important to spend some time to understand what's going on in the other teams, how they work, what they're up against, or whatever, so that you can have those other necessary tools of compassion, understanding, and awareness to work together.
Yeah, because it's in the end of the day, it's if you know how the machine works the business, not just but if you understand how your team contributes to the overall mission, and then you push that down to your team members and say, guys, look, girls, look, this is why what we do is important, that you end up driving purpose for your team, right? And he talks about commitment, which kind of falls into the next one, which is a little bit of commitment to do stuff, right? You're much more committed to do things, and he talks about lack of commitment. So let's make sure that's dysfunction 3 is lack of commitment. But again, if you can drive purpose in your team, it's a lot easier to make decisions and stick to those decisions when you have a team behind you willing to break through the wall with you, right? I mean, it's so much easier. And when they have purpose, knowing, well, this is what we're doing this for, right? Then you can do that. So specifically though, with lack of commitment, and I'll read it from them, from Patrick, it's, be comfortable with making a decision that may turn out to be wrong, push for closure, and adherence to schedules. So I think this is really the part in my eyes where this is the courage, right? You have to have the courage to say, okay, we're going to go a certain way. If we screw it up, we'll learn from it, we'll recover, right? We live in I think back in the day, and when I say back in the day, I meant maybe pre-2020, companies were really scared to take big pivots and big changes in things. And when you heard a company doing that, made news, right? Especially from a major company, like in a big turn events, right? And that would be the headline as people did something. But I think from a small team perspective and from a small business perspective anyways, if you're not fluid, if you're not able to say, we're going to do this, and if we screw it up, guess what? We're cool. We know it didn't work, and what will, right? I figured out X amount of ways to not to build a light bulb, and then not Einstein, but Edison. How not to build a light bulb, and then I just needed one to do it, right? Those are valuable so valuable of those, and I don't want to say failures, because I don't believe they're failures. I believe that they're just ways that you just didn't, right? So,
There's
but
lessons learned.
you gotta be committed, right? If you're not committed, Jocko talks about it, right? And those guys, Leif talks about it in Extreme Ownership. Make a decision, stick with it. If it doesn't work, okay, change it and move on then, right? Be prepared for that. And I think that has a lot to do the same thing. People are like, well, what if we screw it up? Right. And listen, to be fair, if you game plan those type of things with your team and you get all the team inputs, you shouldn't have a problem making a decision. It shouldn't be hard, right? Because we all, and leadership wise, now different things. If you're talking about like a business decision for something, grab your information, do all your research. And if you've done it all, you've gathered all your intelligence about something, having backups to backups, giving a presentation where you could go 3 different ways, but this is the way we're going. Your backup plans are probably the other ways that you didn't decide to go. Oh, this didn't work, and you can hop right on those. Now, to me, when it comes to making a decision about interpersonal things on a team, that's where it becomes a little bit difficult, where you have, because we're good with right versus wrong. That's not good. That's not right. It's wrong. Fix it. What is the difficult part about leadership and making commitment to stuff is when it's wrong versus wrong decisions that you have to make, or a right versus right decision that you have to make, right? And those are the ones, to me, that are the hardest ones to commit on, right? Like, what do we do when 2 people are in the running for a certain award and they're both amazing? What do you do if it's not clear? It's a right versus right. Or what do you do when, like, either way you're going to eat what I would call a shit sandwich? Either way we're going to get screwed on this. What are we going to do with it? Okay, I can understand, but in the end, to all those decisions, make one, stick by it, and move forward. Right? That's what I think could happen, because, again, go back to the machine theory, right? Your decisions or your indecision is going to maybe potentially screw up the rest of the machine. So you got to be able to say, we've got these, we need to make these types of things. We need to understand that there's timelines. We understand that there's, people that need it on the other end, or how we affect the supply chain, whatever. So I agree with him in saying, look, just nobody's, and he says, be comfortable. Nobody's ever comfortable making the hard decisions, right? I mean, the right versus rights and the wrong versus wrongs, you're always going to, maybe in the back of my mind kind of go, but Robert Miller just chimed in, and he's right. Go forward with it. We used to say all the time, Skipper, behind closed doors, we could discuss it all we want. All good. The leadership team can discuss it. That door opens, though, and whatever you say, we're going to stand by it, and we're going to move on from it. If we screw it up, guess what? We fix it. We admit, and that's the other thing. Admit, hey, we did wrong. Build trust. We screwed that one up. This is the information we have. We screwed it up, and we're gonna go. We're gonna move in another direction. So it kind of all, right, the fluidity of it, the pivotness of it, it all kind of plays to the same thing.
Well, I think this dysfunction, the lack of commitment, kind of sings to clarity a little bit, right? Because that's what it's calling for. It's calling for clarity. Like, hey, you say you're going to do something. That's cute. When are you going to do it? Like, who's going to do it? When's it going to be done? Right? Because he talks a lot about, just that's the lack of commitment by way of ambiguity, right? Yeah, we'll get that done. That's something we got to fix, right? Like we're talking around it, but we're not committing to action to solve for it. And I think, yeah, Robert makes great points. And I think, again, it's something I wrote down earlier, which is to, like, sticking with your decisions and all of the like. And I wrote down this thing of, like, the voices and opinions on a matter versus the responsibility of solving the matter, right? Like, there can be a lot of opinion about how an issue is resolved, but there might be one person responsible for that decision, right?
Sure.
And at the end of the day, all the voice and opinion in the world, like, should be acknowledged and should be heard. But at the end of the day, it's the decision maker's responsibility for the
Correct.
outcome, right?
Right. Yep.
Because it's so easy. I used to call this the backseat drivers, right? Like it's so easy to sit back there and tell me what I'm doing wrong or what should be or where we should be focused. Yeah, it's easy because you're not in a driver's seat, man. Like, it's easy to get back there and go, oh, this isn't right and that's not right. And yeah, that's a great place to be, man. The guy that can just sit back there and point fingers and backseat drive on how things should be. Yeah, great place to be. Because at the end of the day, when what you're telling me I should be doing or what I'm doing wrong, when I go do it and it's not right, whose name, face is all over that. Right. Now I'm just the scapegoat for your bad ideas. And it was easy for you to throw your bad ideas around because you didn't have any skin in the game. Right. And so that's a part of leadership. And that's where, again, like knowing the difference of all that voice and opinion versus the responsibility. And that's where it comes in. And with regard to like the decision making and all that stuff, like we had this Marine Corps leadership principles, right? Make sound and timely decisions, right? Like that's important, right? These things,
Sure.
make the commitments. You might not know, right? You might not know if you're right or wrong. You're just, like you said, stuck between the rights and the wrongs and wrongs. Pick one. Yeah, like it's going to be right. And but the minute you pick it and you start making moves, you're going to start learning, and you're going to know better, so that what you don't know of the two rights or the two wrongs, the minute you pick one and start moving towards it, you're going to learn something, right? You're going to start, so.
Yeah. And look, this goes back to, dysfunction number 2 and dysfunction number 1, which I'm sure he wrote all these dysfunctions for a purpose. But when you look at them and you say, look, when you have a team that trusts each other, everybody knows where they stand and that their voice is important in some form or fashion. And you're able to voice those opinions without feeling that, right, you're in a safe space where if we do have conflict over something or we think something shouldn't go a certain way, but at the end of the day, everybody knows that that person is in charge and that person's going to ultimately make the decision. And sometimes they're going to tell you, hey man, shut up in color. We got to do it this way because here's the thing. When you talk about decisions, the higher up you go, the more information above you have than the people below you. And I hate using above and below, but we're saying on a team and we have a leader, that leader may have information about something.
Well, look, there is an above and below. There's a hierarchy of responsibility.
Right.
There's a hierarchy of responsibility.
As a team, I try to, right, when you're trying to get everybody, it's unspoken, right? It's unspoken knowing I know that guy's in charge, right? But as long as he doesn't, what we talked about before, arrogance and ego, as long as he's like, it's my decision, I'm going with, like, Dick, that's not a team, right? Like, that's not what you want. That nobody wants to work for somebody like that. Nobody wants to, right? And so those people, but there is a level of saying, but here's the thing. That leader, if they're a good leader and they know things, they don't hold stuff back. Before when I was younger, I felt like there was a lot of decisions or a lot of things that were happening that even on some level I didn't know about, right? I didn't know when I made the decision. So I was handcuffed. So not only were they not asking me because I was lower in the job cycle, but I was also not privy to a lot of the information on the other side that would have helped me make a decision or at least understand better. And I think that's really important when I talk about transparency all the time. If you give them that thing to make decisions and to make a commitment to which one way or another, and you're adding and you're allowing your team to have inputs to make the best decision for the group, even though one person is going to be the voice, right? Because that's really what it is. Who's going to speak? I'm going to speak. Got it. You're the leader. You're going to speak for everybody else there, right? Whatever, if that's making a product, if it's providing a service, it doesn't matter. If you, again, give them purpose, tell them why, give them the details from above well, that's not going to work. Well, why not? Well, because, hold on. The operations is changing the way that they're doing something, which is going to affect us. Oh, okay. Well, then we can make a decision now based off of that extra information that comes. So being that leader, to me, there's always also that conduit between the information that's above and understanding it more, and then being able to relate it and translate it to your team to say, this is how we're going to do stuff. Oh, got it. It may not be the right way. Something may trump something, but make the commitment, stick with it, right? You can disagree and still commit, by the way. That can still totally 100% happen, which is a theme in the book. And so I think that's important with transparency and communication, is being able to kind of do that.
And the one that you didn't say in the list that's worth mentioning is commander's intent, right? Like,
sure, absolutely.
Knowing the intentions, big picture.
Yeah. And how it applies to each level, right? And so, and then this leads to, we talked about ego, we talked about, it leads to avoidance of accountability, right? Which is his fifth part, which is his fourth dysfunction. And that's really encouraged and allowed the team to serve as the first and primary accountability mechanism. So I think this is to me, this is the we part, right? Everybody knows that person is going to get the blame. The leader is going to get the blame, but it's still a we concept, right? The leader is going to take it on and say, I made the decision, or we made the decision, right? However it has to come out of whatever the expectation is for him to present, or her to present. But then the team goes, when it's behind closed doors, the team's back together. Listen, we were accountable to you. We gave you wrong information. We're sorry, blah, blah, right? There's something at every level, right? Because look, you're the leader. You're standing in the front saying, I made the decision. Our team is doing this, right? Got it. We're accountable for that decision that we made, and I'm the one to bring it to you. Okay, great. To me, you're just acknowledging about, look, this is leadership 101, right? Leadership 101 is, I own it, right? Extreme ownership. I own it. We're accountable to it, and we will fix it. Boom, whatever that's going to be. But being able to do that, and for each part. So later on, so this is the key to this to me. Later on, if you're a true team, when you guys are all back in the room, and you're a person that was maybe responsible for one portion of that decision, you get back into that room, around that table, whatever it's going to be. Hey, Jane, I'm sorry I gave you wrong information. I'm accountable for that information that led us to make the wrong decision, and for you to voice it. So to me, it's not just, if we're good teams and we lead up and you got to be also accountable to say, I screwed that one up as a small part of this, as a small cog in this thing that we're doing. I apologize. I'll make it better, right? Because now that breeds that trust back and forth. I know, okay, got it. You know what? We made the mistake as a team, right? So there's a lot of we's at the top, and then you can say the I's when you're lower. But I think that's I think that has to happen. You can't just be like, well, you got in trouble for it. You screwed that one up. Excuse me for our viewers. You screwed that one up. I didn't get busted for it, right? I mean, I think that has to happen.
That's that ego. That's that.
Yeah.
But this is where these dysfunctions interplay, right? Because the avoidance of accountability from the perspective of that guy going, I didn't do that, man. Sally did that, man. It wasn't me. It is an erosion. It's an erosion of trust, right? It's going to start, I heard someone say once, if you're wearing armor, right, and the team's covered in their armor, right, that's where we start putting holes in our armor, when there's, playing game wasn't me. Yeah.
The easy one that we've all heard and know is that when someone who's in charge gets up in front and go, well, I told my team to do it a certain way and they didn't do it. Well,
yeah.
I mean, that's you're getting from the top and the bottom. You're
going to get a new team one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, because if I'm a leader, if I'm above you, and you say that, I'm like, you don't know anything. You are not a leader, and you are not a team leader. That's not how a team works. Period. And that's not what I need up here. If you're trying to get up here where we are, that is not what you do, right? Number one. Number two, everybody below you just went, dude, really? You just sold all of us for that when it was ultimately your responsibility, and we all knew it, and we all, right? Like, so but that's the easy one that people know. That's the easy one that you can do. What we don't, and that's a no-no from the start. What we don't talk about is we don't talk about that what erodes the small tactics units is when you screwed it up, you did, you're a lower member on the team, or you're a part of the team that's not the voice and the leadership, and later on you go, thanks for taking that bullet for me, or thanks for taking that bullet and standing in front and being a shield for us. Thank you for that. Like, I think that's just as important for building team dynamics, because is there a little bit of, from the leader's perspective of that team, is there a little bit of like, damn, John screwed that one up, dude. Okay, I took the bullet for him. Sure, we all know it. It's implied. You don't need to bring it up, right? That's the ego part of the conflict that doesn't need to happen. It's screwed up. Got it. But if he comes to me or she comes to me and says, I'm sorry you went in front of the firing squad for us for that, and you know what? I'm going to make sure it's better next time. That's just as important as the leader going
it's
back
a plus
down.
one. Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
a plus one for trust.
100%.
Because that not being said, let's say from the subordinate, it's par for the course, right? I try to work with people sometimes around like expectations and their why. Like, hey, well, were you doing that for everyone to pat you on the back? Well, no, I was doing it because I wanted it X. Okay, great. So look at it this way. If you don't get those pats on the backs and the kudos, hey, good job, then that's whatever, because you weren't doing it for that solely. Those are the bonuses, right? So if you get the, hey, man, that was awesome, then that's a plus one. So, because some people look at it like, I hear folks talk a lot like, well, I don't get any appreciation for all the effort I put into solving that client's problem. Like, yeah. Well, why were you trying to solve their problem? Like, well, I like serving people. Okay. That's your win. Like the fact that you executed and you took care of them or whatever, the fact that they didn't like be bold enough or courageous enough to come express, or maybe even no, or whatever, right? Like you can't solve for that, but that wasn't your why. Like you weren't doing it explicitly so they can come, cheer you on, celebrate you in such a big way. You're doing it because you're here to serve and you're here to do these things. And if they do that, hey man, that's icing on the cake, keep your main thing the main thing.
But I think from a leader's perspective, you need to go back and do that though. If you're a leader of a team and you guys succeed, you may get the medal and everybody else may get the piece of paper.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You better go back, in my view, and say to everybody, thank you. You did awesome. And those attaboys and attagirls and those little things, those are drivers. And we're going to have a great guest, and we'll talk about her later, but we're going to talk about leading generations. The younger the generation, the more that's needed to as we get there. And it can't be something older generations go, well, we didn't have that, right? It's a very different world we live in because of the phone and social media. They've grown up very differently. And look, as a leader, I should want to give the credit to the people below me, in my view, right? I should want to give the credit to the team, right? I mean, to me, that's the ultimate form of, look, when you get up on the Academy Award and they start, not getting slapped, let's just make sure that's number one. But when you get up there and they say, look, this couldn't happen if it wasn't for, that's what you should be doing for your team and in front of other people, right? Like saying, hey, and then go fight for your team to get recognition awards because they did a great job on something. Or if you have the power yourself to do it, you better do it, because again, what are you building? You're building trust, you're building appreciation, you're building you're building a culture that you can have conflicts and move on from them, right? You're building people to buy into your mantra of what you guys are doing and how you run as a team and as a department. Dude, that is so important. I think when you look at it in that respect, that you gotta be able to say, it can't be overlooked, right? We can't, again, a person's why, they got to figure out their why on their own. We can't tell people why they do things. That's intrinsic to every single person individually. But if you drive the team from an outside view in a certain way, I think you'll gain all those types of stuff and going back on it. So and that leads us to the last one, right? Inattention to results.
Mhm.
And that's to set the tone. The role of the leader in that, as Lencioni points out, is to set the tone of a focus on the results. So what we do. I think sometimes we get into there is an end goal. There's always an end goal in a business, that is to be potentially successful, whether that's profitable or if it's a nonprofit that's just making sure that everybody's getting paid. They're not driving different things, but there are end results to stuff. And a leader, in my eyes, of a team leader specifically, needs to make sure that all those other things, that there is a focus on that. So sometimes it's going to be, hey, okay, what are we making sure? Shiny objects, squirrel, squirrel, right? What are we main focusing on? And are we driving towards that? Are there going to be road bumps? Are there going to be challenges? Are there going to be side streets? 1000% there's going to be, and that's okay. What is our driving result though? What's our laser focus on something? And I think that gets lost at points in time. And sometimes and I say we, leadership, advisorship people, sometimes we focus on the extra stuff. I think sometimes too much,
Mm.
right? Because it is. Sometimes it's a look. Feelings aside, we need to drive forward on something, or feelings aside, we need to stay late this day. There is a focus of all this, of why we're here, and that can't be lost in all this. I think that's main, and when we don't give attention to that, and so to me, I think what leaders can do is if they, and a good leader, I didn't learn it till I was older. You find lessons and everything to bring it back to center, right? So you can have all these kind of conflicts, and you can have all these types of issues that kind of personnel driven, HR driven, whatever your things are that are within the team, all the dynamics that Lencioni talks about. But you have a mission, and you have you got to bring everybody back to them. That's the goal. Bring everybody back to the center. Okay, how do we get this done? How do we get this to where we need to be?
Yeah, clarity of vision, right? Like, what's the desired outcome? And that burden is on the leader, right? To be that visionary, to sell that vision, to communicate that vision, to clean up the ambiguity in that vision, right? Like because that is the result, right? And it helps then be the the filter by which you make all your decisions by. Like, does does that right attribute more to our desired mission, our vision, what we're after. And I think and it's always, you can never talk about results, without, I always like to remind people about just, scorecarding from the point of like leading and lagging indicators, right? Like, it can't be, just look at the results when the report card comes, right? It needs to be, what are all the leading indicators that result in what we're after. And those are the things that we need to be focused on here and now. It's another great book that's out there. Four Disciplines of Execution, really great book on this area of kind of scorecarding and getting things done, and what to pay attention to in the process. And a leader, has to set the tone for these results. And that means, the easiest analogy I use in this, and understanding how to monitor that along the way, is, our kids we got report cards in school, right? But, there's a difference between leading indicators, lagging indicators. That report card is your lagging indicator, meaning once you get it, there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Right.
It's the results. But there's a bunch of leading indicators along the way that attribute to the success of getting that report card. What are they? Their attendance, their assignments in on time, their grades on assignments, right? There are how much are we reading? How much are we studying, right? There's all these leading indicators that if we did all those things, we don't even need to see the report card. We know it's going to be straight A's, right? And that's the power of knowing, hey, what are the leading indicators? What are the things that are going to attribute to your success of that end game, that mission, right? What are we trying to accomplish? Okay, what are the key things that we have to do to get those done? Those are the most important things to monitor, because they're going to tell you the story of what that report card is going to look like. And so bringing some attention to the results, and knowing what those leading indicators are super important.
Yeah, I think as well, small rudder steerage when you're talking about
Yeah.
indicators
Yeah. Yeah.
as you move is a lot easier to do than major shifts or major, even with small conflicts, right? You can take all of these and say a good leader is going to monitor for all of these types of dysfunctions and make small rudder things as they can, right? Like, so I always reference my sci-fi world of Gandalf, who talks about it's the little things every day. The contributions of little things. It's not huge major things that make things happen. Usually, it's little things that
Yeah.
make things happen all the time. And so I think that works when you're talking about teamwork, right? It's little bits of rudder steerage here and there. When you talk about building trust, it's little things that you can do every single day about trust. When you think about conflicts and making things in a place that people feel comfortable about doing, it's little stuff that you do every day to do that, right?
Hmm.
Talk about commitment and saying, we're going to do this, here's we're going, and you re-emphasize every day little things about that we're committed to this thing, and but being ready to change if we need to, right? And being accountable, saying, guys, everybody's accountable for their own stuff, their own performance, right? How do we high perform? Putting that on the things and saying, ultimately, everybody knows I'm gonna go forward with this, be the voice and be that, and we're all good. Because if you have a team behind you for that too, and it's like, we're with you, boss, right? Dude, that's what you want to hear. Like, we're with you 100%.
Yeah.
And if you screw up, we're sorry. We screwed that up, and for you, like, you're gonna get people to buy in, and that's, I mean, that's not ultimate. You're ultimately doing that, but I'm ultimately never looking to for people. It's the trust, the loyalty, right, and the respect, right? I don't go into it saying you will give me that. You go into those things saying I'm going to work these to. I'm going to make the. I'm going to work for you so you can do those. You can allow
Hmm.
yourself to do those types of things. And then the last one is the little stuff, the results, right? How did we do something, right or wrong, and how do we fix it next time, or how do we do better the next time we do that product? And it's little things every single time. I think that's, to me, like you said, it's not, you've got leading and lagging points that you bring on. What do you do with those things? How do you make those better every single time, and how do you fix each one in little increments? Because it's a lot easier to handle that than in major ways. So,
Yeah.
all in all, good book. Something I absolutely liked about it. One of the things the last point I wanted to make and bring up about it was, I love that Patrick says, building a cohesive team is not complicated.
Hmm.
I think that's true, right? It falls into my KISS theory of keeping things simple. I think if you trust people, if you empower people, if you lead with them, if you're accountable, if those things happen, you know, I go back to, people want to do good. Like, nobody comes in and goes, "Oh, I want to do a shitty job. I want to look like crap." You don't. If you've gotten to that point, you should probably change jobs. Number one. But like, if people are really excited and whatever, like, how many times have you seen a bad situation and someone comes in and all of a sudden people are reinvigorated because they're like, man, this person is here and they're purposeful, and man, it's just, and now all of a sudden people are doing their jobs and they're excited and they're like, that is inspiring, man. And you could do it at all types of time with those things. And again, it's not hard. I'll give you an example. We had a really bad uh, aircrew shop on one of my squadrons that I was in. We had a bad leader, and to his credit, somewhat too, he was in a different community than he was before, so he had to really change. And there was a lot of there's a lot of, you're not from our community. There's a little bit of that in there, and so you had to really break in. But people had done it. It's not like people hadn't done that before. And this is really dumb, and it was so stupid. And again, we were rescue guys, so of course we're doing stupid jokes. But he just came in and started a really dumb game with us. And I was his peer at the time, and so, but I watched him start this stupid game. And
Are we saying literally?
yeah, literally, he
Yeah.
started this stupid game. I won't mention what it was because we were younger, but it was, and we were, again, rescue guys, so it was stupid. And dude, I'm telling you, it was so dumb and childish, but yet it it was his basis to bring us together because he knew the situation had been so grave for so long, and it had gotten out to the fleet that it was bad situation, and it never got worse. We got sat down by our department head and said, I'm gonna fire your boss," and we were both like, because it was him and I, and we were like, "Okay, can you guys handle it?" And we're like, "Yeah." And then we had departments come up to us and say, "We understand what's happening. We get it. We're here to help." And man, with hearing that from a boss to say, "I trust you guys," and empowered us, from other departments saying, "We're here to support you in leadership wise. If you need, we'll come in and check in on you guys." But they didn't know how to run our shop. They didn't know what we needed. Like it was between the two of us to do. And then him starting this very, again, just dumb thing that really united. It was a uniting thing that happened. Well, again, small stuff, right? Like it wasn't major. They were making a major move, which was going to definitely impact things. And what had happened, we small positive stuff to do that. And I think that's what ended up being a great team and him being a great leader because he gained trust. We were there to be able to handle conflict problems, right? We were committed to doing things like we were supposed to. Everybody was accountable for their own stuff, and he made sure to hold people accountable for things that we were going to do, and he was going to take the blame, right? And he was new, so he could people gave him a little bit of leeway that he knew he had runway to play with, as we used to say. And then he knew the result was we needed this needed to be the outcome, right? And the outcome was this needed to be better. And I think that was just, again, small stuff that was so important, but it plays into every single thing. And again, it's not complicated. Like Lencioni said, it's not complicated to do. And so I've seen it in action before happen. And I love that part of it. To me, it's just not complicated. Like it's, do the right thing. And so.
Keep it simple, Flip.
Yeah, man. You know what I mean?
Now, I was going to just round that out. It's just my thought on it was just that it's easy to say no to the small stuff, but it's the small stuff that adds up to the big results, right? It's easy to say, like you were talking about the game, like it's easy to say, "Nah, it's stupid," but those small things add up to the big results. And
I agree, brother.
Those small things are what keep you agile, right? It's hard to move the big things, right?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Right, it's a small pair of wheels on a 500-pound object that gets it moved, not any it's totally true like that. And so I think there's a rudder shift needs to be looked at from probably America as a whole about what's important and I think it's happening, right? But
America as a whole is run on small businesses as an example, right? You can look at the big companies, but if you dug in, you'd realize a lot of those big companies are supported by subcontracted companies that are small businesses, So I think this is a bit universal in a way. All these little things are what add up to the big things.
I agree with you.
We can't be passive and forget about that and push that stuff aside and not realize.
No, because it's recognizing, right? So that to me is on the team, right? And you're recognizing the little contributions of everybody on the team that makes it possible, because it wouldn't be possible without it, period. Or else someone's got to do it, and they may or may not have the time in their job title and description to be able to do those types of things, or the skill sets, right? Because there are definitely different skill sets for that. So I think recognizing all those is definitely a portion of it too, and he's talking about it from a dysfunction, like what's wrong. We were obviously looking at it from that, but
what's awareness thing, man? That's what I love about reading and these conversations and all that stuff, man. It's like G.I. Joe, man. More you know. More you know. But shine a light on these things, man. And the more you know, and can put a name to them, right? Like we're putting a name on some of these dysfunctions, or Patrick Lencioni, as he puts a name on these things that break teams down. And I think that's it. That's the win. So
yeah, absolutely. So listen, remember, 5 dysfunctions of a team. We reviewed that one. Be good to go. Lencioni has some other ones too, so go out there and look at those ones. Who knows? We may review them in the future at some point. But absolutely good things. being able to do something. I know he also has the advantage, and you talked about the one with the decisions,
Yeah, he's got good ones. I've read The
talking to people.
Advantage. I think Get Naked or something naked, one of them. Truth About Employee Engagement.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got a few up on the shelf. They're all great.
Yep,
I've gotten a lot out of
absolutely.
all of them. So.
Well, good. Well, listen, what do you got going on, buddy? What do you got going on the Lions Guide before we wrap this up?
Ooh, what do you got going on? You're official. Don't forget.
I know.
Official
What do you got going
contributor.
on when you're podcasting with that section?
No, well, again, I appreciate and this. I know this is just for fun thing for you, putting the streamcast and this stuff together, but you're passionate about it. Energizes me, man. I love chopping it up with you on leadership for sure. On Lions Guide, what do we got going on? Great podcast coming out. We've got one that dropped yesterday, Habits of High Performers. Those conversations are really great. Again, when it comes to leadership, it's my philosophy. Like, leadership's a demanding role. We've got to adopt a high performance mindset to meet the challenges of leadership. And so that's kind of really what Lions Guide's all about. So I've been talking a lot about that. We get real and raw about it, have those conversations just like here, have those conversations about what it takes to win, be productive, have the energy we need to get through the day, actually enjoy our roles of leadership, and meet the challenges honorably, as I like to say. So there's that. And, I guess aside from the podcast, I've got a workshop coming up. So anyone local, I'm going to do an in-person day-long high performance leader workshop. So I've been doing workshops virtually, over a 12-week span, but I'm going to do my first one day one. Looks like it's going to be June 8th. Going to be limited, folks. So anyone interested, hit me up wherever you're seeing me, and I'll get you in. Otherwise, get registered on linesguide.com.
And local is Maryland for everybody. So just
yeah, you can fly in.
That's right.
We're flying again. So, but yeah, no, I imagine we'll fill up pretty quick with locals. But certainly if anyone wants to fly in, join me, great. But June 8th, look for details on that coming out. A day-long high performance leader workshop, got a consolidated, accelerated igniter version of what I've been doing in a longer form over the last year. Excited to do that. It's just a way I'm trying to serve more people, and faster. And so I'm excited about doing that. And yeah, man, that's it. That's what we're doing. We're doing a little bit of everything. We're trying to save the world with better leadership and more courage.
Trying to save the world.
We're saving the world. We're saving the world with more courage and leadership.
Well, look, as we forecast what's coming out on the Flip Side Streamcast Live, I want to just let everybody know next month. Next Thursday, I'm going to do the rant by myself and talk about leading up. So what we talked a little bit about here and about how you can help your boss do better things. There's some great books out there, which I will recommend, but I'll give you kind of some of my insight for that, of how you're able to do that. Give you my 5 principles of it that I think is really important to keep it simple. Remember the 5 things to do. The Lions Den will be the second week, second Thursday of the month, and we'll get back on the streamcast, and Dale and I will chop it up about things that we don't know what we're bringing to the table. We'll just see what it's going to be. And like I said, truth be told, we talked about it 10 minutes before, and that's it. And so we have some idea to congregate, but not that much. Really excited about my guest. My guest is Laura Colbert next month. She's the author, How to Pee Standing Up or Sirens. Great story. She MP during kind of the war on terror. She was an Army MP, went to be a principal, and now does her own Strategic Leadership Academy. Awesome, good friend. We made friends probably in a week. I can't wait to talk to her. We're going to talk about leading generations. So we keep talking about the boomers to Gen Z, or Gen Alpha, as she actually just texted me during the thing. The newest one is called Gen Alpha, which my son is in. So how to lead them, because 4 of those generations are in the workforce right now. And I think there's a lot of people out there to go, how do we talk to a TikTok generation? She wrote a great article not too long ago, which got me excited about it. So I can't wait to talk to her about that. And then we're both excited about this. We are not going to review a book next month. We are going to review Man in the Arena, the Tom Brady story. So we're going to find leadership points in all of those things about how he did that. And look, this is coming to you from a diehard Buffalo Bills fan. So he tormented us for 20 years, and I'm going to watch man in the arena because when he's not tormenting us and not in our division, I can look back on it now and look about what his leadership pieces were, how it kind of played out, and we're going to review that. So we'll go episode by episode, and we'll kind of look at what we brought out. And so, which is great. There's no guessing here, right? There's no leadership lessons that were supposed to be brought out in. So we're really gonna look at our own and say what we think and what we saw during what year and what episode they were kind of doing. So we're excited about that one.
There's not a framework. Like here we had a framework to kind of talk to, but with that, we're just kind of go dig up the golden nuggets of leadership through the series. So it's gonna be fun.
I think it'll be fun and important. So if that's all we got, listen. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for listening if you're going to watch it later. Again, our inaugural of the Flip Side Streamcast live came out now. And so we thank you for showing up. And as always, have a great week and flip out.
See you, everybody. Thanks for coming.